Hey guys, tonight we drift gently back to a summer that was not yet a battlefield, not yet a headline, but still carried the quiet tension of a held breath. It's June 1914, and the breeze smells faintly of tobacco smoke, rose gardens, and warm engine oil. Gentle sunlight falls across Europe's boulevards and back streets, where children chase bicycles and orchestras play Strauss in open-air cafes. The world is not at war, not yet, but something is humming underneath, low and steady, like a kettle about to boil. You wouldn't survive long here, if we're being honest. The food's charming but questionably preserved, the medicine primitive, and you'd be scandalously overdressed. Or underdressed, depending on your station. No Wi-Fi, no antibiotics, just the rustle of newspapers, telegrams with clipped phrases, and whispers of Balkan trouble that most people don't quite believe will amount to anything. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing who else is dozing off around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step onto a cobbled street in Vienna, where men in uniforms walk beside horse-drawn carriages. It's a world of brass buttons and monocles, where maps still matter and telegrams still sound like magic. You pass a bakery where the smell of yeast curls through the air. And you hear old men speaking German with a solemn elegance, sipping coffee from small, thin cups. In this part of Europe, the Austro-Hungarian Empire stretches like a patched quilt across dozens of languages and uneasy loyalties. Its emperor, Franz Joseph, is old enough to have seen Napoleon's shadow. And yet, the real center of attention isn't him. It's his nephew, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. You spot the Archduke reading in his garden, poring over troop logistics and political reports. He's not particularly charming, thick mustache, stern gaze, but he's deeply practical. He believes the empire needs reform. He wants to loosen Austria-Hungary's tight fist over Slavic regions, offering more autonomy to prevent rebellion. A clever idea, perhaps. But cleverness often annoys power. Historians still debate just how much anyone in power truly wanted this reform. Some say he was a threat to the existing order. Others believe he was simply unlucky. You follow Franz Ferdinand to a ball in June. He's stiff on the dance floor, but attentive to his wife, Sophie. They aren't supposed to be affectionate in public. Royal protocol frowns on her status. But tonight, rules feel softened by the summer air. Musicians play softly under golden chandeliers. Politicians clink glasses and talk about railways, not revolutions. A few thousand miles southeast, a quieter tension simmers. In Serbia, and in the heart of Bosnia, the air buzzes with something more raw. Nationalism. A belief that borders drawn by empires are not real. And that one day, Slavic peoples might rise and redraw the map with their own hands. Young men carry this dream like a secret flame. You step into a smoky room in Belgrade. Posters of unity and independence hang crooked on the walls. A group of young men huddle around a table, whispering plans. Among them is Gavrilo Princip, pale, thin, coughing between sentences. He's just 19. You watch him handle a pistol with uncertain fingers, a fringe detail. The group calls itself the Black Hand. Their symbol? A skull and crossbones with a dagger and a bomb. Very theatrical, almost absurd. But even absurd things leave shadows. When they hear Franz Ferdinand is visiting Sarajevo on June 28th, they make a decision. That date, coincidentally, is Vidovdan, a Serbian national holiday, rich with the memory of the 1389 Battle of Kosovo. For Serbs, it's a day of tragedy and glory. For the Archduke, It's just a date on a tour. You ride the train with him, the wheels clicking gently beneath you. Sophie sits beside him. Sarajevo rolls into view. Red-roofed houses, a sparkling river, and thousands of people in the streets. He waves from the car, military hat glinting in the sun. Then, a sound. A failed grenade. It misses the car, bouncing off the folded roof. Smoke and confusion rise. But Franz Ferdinand insists on continuing. A few hours later, the car makes a wrong turn, an unscheduled stop, right in front of Gavrilo Princip. He steps forward. 2 shots. You hear them before you see the chaos. One hits Sophie, the other, the Archduke. He slumps in the seat. Blood on white uniforms. A note. Scholars still debate whether Princip intended to kill both or just Franz. He was so nervous, so unsure. But bullets don't ask for clarification. And with that, the fuse is lit. You stand in the quiet afterward as newspapers roll off presses and headlines scream in a dozen languages. Vienna mourns. But you wake to a world trying to keep calm. The newspapers are cautious, at first. Franz Ferdinand is dead, yes, but assassinations have happened before. Remember the Empress of Austria, stabbed in Geneva? Or King Umberto of Italy? Monarchs die, empires adjust. The machinery of diplomacy turns its brass gears. You sit in a Viennese cafe again, this time in early July. The waiter pours strong coffee, and the air is filled with the chatter of politics. Quiet, not yet frantic. A carriage passes, drawn by 2 grays, and the driver doesn't know he's pulling a world closer to the edge. The government of Austria-Hungary debates what to do. You're in the room, eavesdropping, unseen, as ministers whisper over maps. There is anger, yes, but also uncertainty. Can they punish Serbia? Will Russia retaliate? Is this the moment for strength or patience? One detail rises from the smoke. They decide to consult Germany, and here, the room shifts. Germany is confident, clipped, brimming with modern military pride. You step into the office of Kaiser Wilhelm II, whose mustache arrives 3 seconds before he does. He's eager, theatrical, and fond of metaphors. He assures Austria they have his blank check of support. No hesitation. This is one of those moments that historians still debate. Was Wilhelm reckless? Did he understand the scale of what might happen? Or did he truly believe it would be a local war, short and sharp? Meanwhile, Serbia braces. You walk the narrow streets of Belgrade, where people read bulletins nailed to walls. Serbia's army is small but proud. The assassination wasn't state-sponsored, but that matters little now. Austria wants justice, or perhaps something harsher. On July 23rd, a 48-hour ultimatum arrives in Belgrade. You hold the paper. It's written in formal, punishing language. Demands for Serbia to suppress nationalist groups, allow Austrian investigators into their borders, and publicly admit guilt. Serbia accepts some, but not all, of the terms, and Austria, with its blank check still fresh, declares war on July 28th. It begins with artillery shells falling on Belgrade. Now the gears turn faster. Russia, protector of the Slavs, declares mobilization. You sit in the Kremlin, where Tsar Nicholas II, slight, uncertain, deeply tired, writes telegrams to Wilhelm, calling him Willie and signing off as Nicky. A strange, sad detail. The 2 men are cousins. They send each other what history now calls the Willie-Nicky telegrams, pleading for peace even as their generals prepare for war. Germany watches Russia move and reacts swiftly. On August 1st, Germany declares war on Russia. 2 days later, on France, you sit aboard a German train rolling westward, filled with uniforms and folded letters. The plan, the infamous Schlieffen Plan, demands rapid movement. Germany will hit France first, swinging through neutral Belgium like a scythe before turning back to deal with slow-moving Russia. You step onto Belgian soil, green and peaceful, until it isn't. Because on August 4th, Germany invades Belgium, and suddenly, Britain wakes. You walk the halls of Whitehall in London, where Prime Minister Asquith and Foreign Secretary Edward Grey weigh their options. Britain had treaties, yes, but also ambiguity. War wasn't inevitable until Belgium cried for help, a fringe but unforgettable moment. On the night war is declared, Edward Grey looks out his window and says, "The lamps are going out all over Europe. We shall not see them lit again in our lifetime." And so, the dominoes fall. The great powers, bound by promises, pride, and plans made decades earlier, lock into place. Men line up to enlist, their hats too large, their coats too stiff. You walk with them, through London, Berlin, Paris, St. Petersburg, Vienna. They smile for photographs. They believe the war will be over by Christmas. Another debated point. Many historians once claimed Europe slept into war, that it stumbled blindly. But now some argue otherwise, that each step was deliberate, if diluted. And you're just walking through the days, watching how August swells with flags, songs, and quiet dread. You see shops sell postcards with romantic pictures of soldiers. Children wave handkerchiefs at departing trains. Lovers kiss quickly and make promises that time will not keep. And above it all, pigeons still flutter through train stations. They don't cheer, they don't cry, they just circle overhead, waiting for quieter skies. The war has begun, not with an explosion, but a slow, tightening silence. You ride the rails with war now. Across the continent, steel tracks hum under trains packed with youth and uniforms. The great armies begin to move, not with thunder, but with clockwork precision. And oddly, for just a moment, it feels more like a festival than a war. You stand on a platform in Berlin as soldiers lean out of windows, laughing, waving paper flags. A brass band plays something stirring and old-fashioned. You see women handing out flowers. The men inside the train cars press their faces to the glass, proud and pink-cheeked. Their boots haven't touched mud yet. It's early August 1914. The German Schlieffen Plan is now more than theory. It's motion, it's hope, it's paperwork and coal smoke and maps. The goal: strike France fast through neutral Belgium, then pivot back to deal with the slow-moving Russian bear. You step into a telegraph office. Messages chatter across Europe in dots and dashes, too many to answer, too urgent to delay. Generals send orders, embassies ask for clarifications, civilians ask for news. And the operators? They just type, wipe their brows, and type again. But Belgium isn't a door that swings open quietly. You walk through the town of Liège as German troops approach. The Belgians, fewer, outgunned, but fiercely determined, fight back. Their forts, ringed around the city, hold longer than Germany expected. It delays the timetable. Not by much, but by enough. A fringe detail. German officers carry guidebooks and railway schedules for Paris, as if it were a sightseeing trip. Some even pack evening wear. Many believe they'll be sipping wine by the Seine in a few weeks. You feel that optimism wobble. Because by the time Germany reaches Louvain, resistance grows bloodier. And here, something shifts. You walk the charred streets after the town is shelled and looted. Ancient libraries burned, civilians killed, buildings razed. The world watches in horror. Germany defends its actions, but Britain sees an opportunity. Back in London, newspapers print headlines about brutality and atrocity, and more importantly, about violated neutrality. Belgium's invasion isn't just a tragedy. It's a turning point. You follow a quiet procession into the British War Cabinet. They know the public won't tolerate war without cause. But Belgium gives them just that. And so, at midnight on August 4th, Britain declares war on Germany. Across the Channel, France readies itself. You walk down the boulevards of Paris, where posters are pasted on every wall. The call to arms is loud and poetic. France remembers its losses in the Franco-Prussian War. This is a chance, not just for defense, but for pride. One curious moment. French soldiers, or poilus, still wear bright blue coats and pantalons rouges, those striking red trousers. It's a tradition, a symbol of honor, but it also makes them easy targets. Military fashion hasn't caught up with machine guns. Meanwhile, Russia stirs from its slumber. In the east, the Tsar's troops begin to mobilize faster than Germany expected. You ride beside them, over creaking roads and cold plains, as they press into East Prussia. Germany begins to worry. 2 fronts, 2 threats, and a clock that's no longer ticking in their favor. Back in Germany, posters go up. Slogans like "Gott mit uns," "God with us," plaster every wall. The people are told it's a defensive war, a just war, a necessary war. You see young men proudly enlist, teachers giving patriotic speeches, newspapers printing victory poems before a single trench has been dug. And yet, beneath it all, something older lingers. You overhear an old man on a park bench whisper, "This won't be like 1870. And he's right, because already, plans are failing to meet the terrain. Horses shy at barbed wire. Cavalry charges stumble into artillery shells. The war many expected to resemble chess is beginning to look more like erosion, slow, grinding, and devastating. Still, trains keep moving. Through Belgium, into France, across Eastern Europe, soldiers read old novels, drink from dented canteens, write home about cheerful meals and patriotic songs. Some of them carry charms, coins, even pressed flowers from sweethearts. You spot one with a lucky rabbit's foot, another with a pebble from the Rhine. Historians still argue how aware these men were of what lay ahead. Some say they were naive, others that they simply couldn't imagine the scale. But you, standing between platforms, listening to the whistle blow, you sense it coming, not a wave, but a slow tide, one that creeps into the boots and the bones and the very breath of Europe. It is only August. The leaves are still green, the sky's still blue, but somewhere far off, a shovel scrapes earth, and the first trenches begin. You march now, not with a spring in your step, but with a growing ache in your boots. It's still August, and the war is young. But already illusions have started to fall away. You walk alongside columns of soldiers heading west, feet kicking up dust, rifles slung with hopeful laziness. The sun beats down, and the lines stretch for miles. This is not the blitzkrieg fantasy of later wars. This is movement through muscle, through patience, through tired legs and paper maps. You watch the German army flow like a great machine toward France, through Belgium. The Schlieffen Plan, so detailed on paper, is already straining. Roads are narrower than expected. Resistance is fiercer. Horses tire faster than trains, and there aren't enough trains to go around. You overhear officers muttering that their timetable is slipping by days. Not weeks yet, but days. And days matter when you're trying to beat Russia before France can dig in. You enter a German field headquarters, where nervous energy runs under every sentence. Messages arrive by motorcycle. Orders go out with snapped words. Maps are redrawn by candlelight. France is proving more stubborn than anticipated, and Belgium keeps slowing everything down. You ride a supply wagon filled with biscuits, bullets, and bandages. They creak and sway with every bump. The soldiers guarding it sing quietly in the evening, a lullaby from the Rhineland that sounds more like prayer than pride. Meanwhile, the French are preparing something old-fashioned. You join a column of French soldiers marching into Alsace-Lorraine. Their red trousers glow in the summer light. They carry sabers, wear kepis, and some still believe in the power of a good bayonet charge. You hear an officer say, "The spirit of France will carry us through." And perhaps it will, but not against what's coming. Because up ahead, just over the hill, machine guns wait. The first clashes are brutal. The Battle of the Frontiers begins in mid-August, and it feels more Napoleonic than modern. You watch waves of French infantry advance in the open, banners fluttering, commanders on horseback giving orders with swords. And then, fire, not just rifles, but the rat-tat-tat of machine guns that do not pause. You crouch in the dirt beside a stunned young man, his uniform already torn by shrapnel. He says nothing, just stares at a line of trees that was supposed to be cover. A medic pulls him back. You follow. Casualties mount faster than predictions. By August 24th, France has suffered over 260,000 casualties. Entire regiments vanish in days. The bright red trousers are no longer symbols of honor, but of exposure. You hear whispers, quiet at first, that the war isn't glorious, that something has gone wrong. You cross into Belgium again to see the small town of Dinant, where French and Belgian forces tried to resist the German advance. Here, you witness one of the darker chapters. German troops, reacting to guerrilla attacks, or perhaps just acting out of fear and discipline, round up civilians. Men, women, children. A massacre unfolds over hours. Scholars still argue whether it was chaos or command, whether it was retaliation or cruelty. But to the people here, it doesn't matter. Their homes burn all the same. You move west with the German army, which is now dangerously stretched. Supply lines lag, horses collapse, shoes wear thin. And yet, the momentum continues, because Paris is close, or seems to be. The British Expeditionary Force, small but professional, arrives in Belgium in late August. You travel with them to Mons, where they dig shallow trenches and prepare for their first real engagement. A quirky fact. British soldiers at Mons reportedly fired so efficiently, the Germans believed they were facing machine guns. Still, the British retreat. And so begins what will be remembered as the Great Retreat. You follow it for days, southward, step by painful step. Horses collapse, boots fall apart. The sun turns to drizzle. Along the way, rifles are lost, helmets abandoned. Even officers weep. The retreat is disciplined, but draining. And yet something curious happens. Everywhere you go, you notice civilians offering water. Farmers waving from hedgerows, children staring at these tired, dirty men like they're still knights. You pause outside a bakery where a soldier trades a cigarette for a crust of bread. The baker's wife presses a small rose into his hand. He doesn't smile, but he holds on to the flower all the same. The rhythm of war begins to change. Gone is the gallop. Now comes the trudge. You hear talk of trenches, not yet miles long, but starting. The ground, churned by horses and shells, is becoming something else. Something permanent. Historians still argue when commanders truly realized the war would be long. But walking beside you now, you can feel it. In the mud, in the weight of gear, in the silence that follows too many gunshots. The cavalry no longer charges. The uniforms begin to dull. The songs grow quieter. You pass a field where poppies bloom red and wild. No one stops to pick them. You ride west now, not in a train, not on a horse, but in a flurry of maps, dust and unease. The German army has pushed farther than most believed possible. Town by town, field by field, they pressed deeper into France. You walk beside commanders who speak in clipped syllables, watching rail schedules like sacred scrolls. They're still counting days, hoping that Paris might fall before the East becomes a problem. And the Schlieffen Plan, that elegant spiral on paper, begins to twist in the real world. The plan had assumed two things: that France would collapse quickly and Russia would crawl slowly. But now, Germany receives news that shakes the entire rhythm of the war. You're in a field tent when a message arrives. Russian forces have invaded East Prussia. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not yet. They were supposed to be slow, unprepared. Instead, they've advanced quickly and threatened German territory. You see the generals blink, lips pressed thin. Now, Germany must divert troops from the Western Front to defend the East. It's a delay, a drag, a crack. Meanwhile, in France, something strange is happening too. You find yourself standing on a dusty road outside Paris, where military taxis are being commandeered, not to evacuate civilians, but to carry soldiers to the front. Hundreds of taxis, each painted black with little lanterns glowing softly. This is not myth. It's the real miracle of the Marne. You hop into the passenger seat beside a mustached driver who speaks with a Parisian lilt and drives like he's late for a dinner date. Behind you, soldiers packed into the back laugh nervously, some humming old cafe tunes. Their orders? Hold the line. Protect Paris. You arrive at the Marne River, where the French and British forces finally dig in. Not to retreat, but to resist. The First Battle of the Marne begins in early September, and here you feel history tipping. The German advance slows, then halts, not because of a dramatic collapse, but because they are tired, stretched, undersupplied, and the Allies barely manage to push them back. It's not a rout, but it's a pause, a moment when the breath of war catches. And with that pause comes a decision: to dig. You crouch beside a French corporal using a bent entrenching tool to carve out the beginnings of what will become a trench. His hands are blistered, his uniform torn, but he hums softly, something like a lullaby. At first, these trenches are shallow, but the digging deepens. 1 foot, then 2, then enough to stand in, then enough to sleep in, and then enough to bury friends in. Trenches spread like spider webs across northern France. German trenches, French trenches, British ones too. They grow without a plan, without elegance, just instinct, survival. You walk their winding paths, muddy, narrow, claustrophobic. Soldiers line the walls with sandbags. They create wooden duckboards to keep their feet dry. They carve niches for candles, letters, small portraits of home, and rats appear, big ones, bold ones. A quirky fact: some soldiers swear the rats grow so large they eat buttons off uniforms. Some even say they recognize individual ones by name. You step into a dugout carved into the earth, where a soldier boils tea over a tiny flame. He offers you a sip. The tea is dark, bitter, oddly comforting. He tells you he hasn't seen the sky in 3 days. Overhead, the world remains deceptively beautiful. Blue skies. Birds still migrate. But here in the trenches, everything is brown and gray and damp. Germany begins building its own trenches, better ones, deeper, reinforced. They've given up the dream of reaching Paris quickly. Now, they settle into holding what they've gained. And across from them, the Allies do the same. You notice something quietly terrifying. The war is no longer about movement. It's about inches, about holding, about waiting. Each trench becomes its own world, filled with slang, routines, rituals. You learn that British soldiers call the enemy Jerry, that French soldiers carry lucky coins, that German trenches sometimes have doorbells made of string and tin cans. Scholars still debate who realized first that this war would not be short, that the trenches were not temporary, but walking through them now, seeing candles flicker against earthen walls, hearing snores and whispered prayers, you feel it deep in your spine. The cavalry won't ride again. The uniforms will get muddier. The sky will grow colder. And the war, still so young, begins to settle, like a fog that refuses to lift. You leave the trench and step into the chill dusk. Somewhere, far off, you hear artillery. But for now, all you can do is breathe and dig. You begin your morning in mud, The sun doesn't really rise in the trenches. It just brightens the gray enough to remind you there's a world above. You stretch your back, bones sore from sleep against a plank, and step over a puddle that wasn't there last night. The war has gone underground. You're standing in the Western Front's new reality. A few months ago, these fields were farmland. Now, they're a patchwork of trenches, barbed wire, craters, and quiet despair. You walk down the line, boots sucking against muck. Soldiers greet you with nods. They're too tired for words, but they offer a crust of bread or a cigarette. The rituals of war now include shared meals of cold beans, mail delivery, and watching for lice. Everyone has them. You do too. One quirky trick. Men hold candles to the seams of their uniforms, listening for tiny pops as lice eggs burst. It's disgusting. It's also a bonding experience. Above ground, snipers scan the horizon, their scopes poking from camouflaged perches. You pass a man with a periscope made from mirrors and a biscuit tin. He lets you look through it. There's nothing out there. Just a tree that looks like it's watching you back. Then a sound. It starts low, like thunder rolling sideways. The ground trembles, not from rain, from artillery. You hear it before you feel it. The distant boom, the split-second silence, and then the whistle that ends with a wet explosion somewhere nearby. Dirt, earth, and bits of something else rain down. You duck beside a wooden wall. A soldier next to you smiles without humor. "That one was short," he says. You don't ask what he means by short. Artillery is the true king of this war. In 1914 alone, millions of shells are fired. Some leave nothing behind but dust and memory. Others miss entirely and sit in the mud like ticking questions. Some explode years later, decades after the ceasefire. Historians still debate which side used it better. But both sides dig deeper to escape it. You walk through support trenches now, named like small towns. Daisy Lane, Maple Avenue, the Strand. There are signs, directions, even makeshift hospitals dug into the chalky soil, where stretchers rest in pools of candlelight. You pass a surgeon rinsing a scalpel in a tin of boiling water. He hums softly. You don't stay long. The days in the trench blend together, like sleep interrupted by noise. You take a turn at sentry duty, staring into no man's land. It looks calm, almost serene, but you know better. It's a minefield of mud, broken rifles, rusted wire, and the haunting shape of what was once someone. You look away. Yet sometimes something unexpected happens. At dusk, the firing stops. Not for peace, but from fatigue. And in that silence, you hear laughter. Not from your trench, from the other one. You look across the divide. A German voice calls out, joking, mocking, or maybe just lonely. Someone replies in French, another in English. One man sings, another joins, and for a few minutes, the war thins. Then someone sneezes, and the spell breaks. A rifle cracks. You duck. This strange rhythm repeats each day. You spend hours in tedium, then seconds in terror, then more tedium. The men write letters home describing it all as boring, until it isn't. You sit beside one of them, reading over his shoulder. He's writing to his sister. He jokes about the trench rats. He calls the lice our sixth man. But near the end, he writes, "Tell Mum I think of the garden, the pear tree, the smell of soap." He folds the letter and kisses it. He's 17. You walk through the latrine area, where soldiers have painted faces on the boards. Even the toilets were expressions, some scowling, some smiling. Humor helps, barely. A captain passes, still trying to look tidy. His boots shine in the moonlight. He nods at you. Another officer scribbles in a field notebook. He's sketching the layout of the trench. There's pride in it. A sense that maybe this is how you survive, by organizing the chaos. One debated point among scholars is just how prepared the armies were for this kind of war. The generals planned for movement, for bold offensives, but the men on the ground adapted faster. You help reinforce the trench wall with woven branches. A bird lands nearby, tilts its head, and flies off. The sky darkens. Night comes, not with peace, but with silence that feels heavier than sound. You lie down on your plank, a boot for a pillow, one blanket for warmth. You hear whispers nearby, two soldiers trading stories. One dreams of opening a bakery. The other misses his dog. Above, stars shine over a ruined field. You close your eyes, and somewhere, in a trench just like this, a boy on the other side does the same. You wake to rain, tapping a tin helmet like a metronome. It's early September, and the skies over northern France have forgotten how to be clear. Water drips from everything. Rifles, rations, boots that haven't been dry in days. You sit up in your trench cubby, brush a beetle off your sleeve, and listen to the soft slosh of mud being stirred by men's feet. Today's mission, hold the line, just like yesterday and the day before that. You're stationed with British troops now, the famed British Expeditionary Force, or BEF, nicknamed the Old Contemptibles. They're professional soldiers, many of whom enlisted long before this war. You hear them grumble about boots and bacon tins, but their movements are smooth, practiced. They clean rifles by touch. They build tea fires under tarps without even waking the rats. A quirky moment. One soldier insists his boots are haunted. They've squeaked ever since he swapped them with a Frenchman, and now he swears he hears them walking when he's not. The others laugh, but no one volunteers to trade. The BEF holds a portion of the Western Front near the Aisne River. After the Battle of the Marne halted the German advance, both sides tried to outflank each other in a frantic race north. What historians now call the race to the sea. But they didn't reach the sea. Not really. Just more trenches, more mud, more death. You follow a dispatch runner over soggy fields. His message? Enemy probing on the left. Hold position. Simple enough. But between here and there are snipers, shell holes, and lines of tangled wire that whisper with wind like ghostly harp strings. He hands you a spool of field telephone wire. Your job is to keep it connected as you go. Every 100 feet, you bend to tie it carefully, anchoring it to roots, stones, or anything that doesn't bleed. Then the shelling begins. You drop to the ground as a shriek tears through the air, followed by a crack that seems to burst from inside your chest. Dirt flings upward like an angry fountain. You taste copper and soil. When you stand again, your hands are shaking. You finish the wire. The message gets through. In the command dugout, officers trace the enemy's movements with matchsticks. They argue in whispers. You hear the names of towns, Ypres, Arras, Armentières, places that will soon become scars. You pass a chaplain holding service in the open. A dozen men stand with heads bowed, steam rising from their collars. One sings, another cries quietly. The chaplain's Bible is wrapped in oilcloth. He reads from Psalms, voice steady, even as distant guns punctuate every verse. Scholars still debate whether the men believed the war would end soon by this point. Some say the illusion lingered through 1914, that Christmas might bring peace. Others believe the trenches broke that hope much earlier. You speak with a lieutenant who scribbles letters for soldiers who can't write. He listens carefully, transcribes their words onto lined paper, and adds flourishes to make the handwriting look noble. Tell Ellie I think of her smile. Tell Dad I'm brave. Tell no one about my leg. He folds each with care, seals them with wax when he has it, sometimes with mud when he doesn't. There's talk of new weapons now. Gas, tanks, aeroplanes. Rumors float through the ranks like cigarette smoke. You hear someone say the Germans have shells that weep poison. Others claim French aircraft can drop steel arrows from the clouds. One fringe rumor, A soldier swears he saw a Zeppelin shaped like a whale drifting silently over the lines at midnight. He says it had lights in the windows, like a ghost hotel in the sky. No one believes him, but everyone listens. Back in the trench, you help unload supplies. Boxes of tinned meat, biscuit rations, ammunition, and something precious: rum. British soldiers receive a daily rum ration, just enough to calm nerves or soften the edge of another damp night. It's poured into enamel mugs and passed carefully, hand to hand. You sip some. It burns, but warmly. Nearby, a soldier writes a poem on a piece of packaging paper. He doesn't share it. But later, you find a line that reads, "We sleep in the cradle of Earth's open jaw and wake to whisper death away." You climb the fire step, slowly, and peek through a periscope. No man's land still stretches, quiet and raw. It's not truly silent, though. The wind rustles wire, boards creak. Occasionally, a figure moves, just a flash, and disappears. You don't fire, not tonight. Tonight is for holding still, for remembering names, for humming half-forgotten songs about home. You settle in your corner, wrap yourself in your coat, and tuck your notebook under your arm. The rats scratch the walls. The sky darkens again. The war continues. But for now, you close your eyes and dream of cobbled streets without soldiers. You find yourself on a train again, only this time, it's not moving. The wooden benches are empty, the steam long gone. This train once brought cheering men to the front, packed shoulder to shoulder with rifles, postcards, and sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. Now, it sits abandoned beside a battered station, somewhere near the Somme, with vines creeping across its wheels and silence pressing in from the trees. You step off the platform and into the churned fields of northern France. The front lines here have shifted, rippling gently like bruises across the land. You're no longer just in trenches. You're in a new phase of the war. Entrenchment without movement. Back in the summer, war felt like motion. Now it feels like waiting. You hike past a regiment of French soldiers digging new fortifications. Their picks hit stone, and every swing echoes like a clock ticking sideways. The men wear horizon blue uniforms, newly issued after the crimson trousers of early war proved far too visible. A sergeant chuckles and says, "Blue for the sky, gray for the mud. What does it matter? We'll all be brown by nightfall." As you follow him, you see the truth in his words. Mud stains everything: faces, boots, even memory. You join a logistics convoy rumbling toward the front. Horses pull carts stacked with crates, food, ammunition, blankets. Some soldiers walk beside the wagons. Others ride awkwardly, arms folded across rifles. You pass a field kitchen smelling faintly of onions and boiled socks. A quirky moment. One of the cooks insists on making stew with chocolate shavings. He says it keeps morale high. He might be right. The line to his pot is longer than the one for bandages. You arrive at a new section of trench, where British and French engineers are working side by side. It's a marvel of cooperation, especially when you remember that neither language has a polite translation for "your ladder just broke again." The trench is deeper than others you've seen, reinforced with corrugated metal, with duckboards laid like a crooked path across the sludge. A sign reads "Wipers," a soldier's mispronunciation of Ypres. The humor sticks. So does the mud. You're handed a rifle for inspection. It's a Lee Enfield, bolt action, smooth and heavy. You check the chamber, close the bolt, and sling it over your shoulder. You won't fire it today, but carrying it changes something in your posture. You step over a collapsed dugout where water has flooded the lower level. A helmet floats lazily near the surface. No one talks about it. Then comes mail call. You sit with a group of British soldiers reading their letters aloud, or pretending to. Some receive actual messages. Others pull out empty envelopes they've kept just to look busy. pride stings less when shared, one man reads. Dear Jack, the dog ate your socks again. And laughter rolls down the trench. Another says, Mum says she's put up a photo of the king, but it keeps falling down. Historians still argue whether this stretch of time, from late autumn to early winter, was the moment soldiers truly understood the war would not end soon. That peace by Christmas was a dream, not a plan. But you can feel the shift in their eyes, in the way they retie bootlaces with care, in how they mark time not by calendars, but by how often the shelling returns, by the smell of gas drills, by who last cleaned the latrine trench. A corporal leads you to a forward observation post. You crawl the last 100 yards on your belly, passing bundles of wire and the bloated shell of a cow that didn't get out of the way in time. The air is thick with decay, but you breathe through your sleeve and keep going. Inside the post, 2 officers share a pair of binoculars and a chocolate bar. They take turns watching the enemy lines, dark smudges in the distance, barely visible through the mist. A small sign above them reads, Welcome to the Ritz. Later, back in the reserve trench, you help erect a notice board. It's for troop rotation, laundry collection, and poker nights. Someone adds a drawing of a cat riding a bicycle. No one knows who drew it, but they all protect it like a shrine. One man paints a name on his helmet. Daisy. It's not his wife. It's his cow back home. He swears she could sense rain a full day before it came. You sit with him that evening, passing a tin mug of weak tea between you. The fire is just a candle inside a biscuit tin. He tells you about rolling hills, butter churns, and the sound of church bells on Sunday morning. You nod, because tonight, that's all that keeps the fog at bay. And somewhere, in the darkness between trenches, a harmonica begins to play. Soft, out of tune, but true. No one tells him to stop. Because even out here, where the world has unraveled into mud and waiting, music still stitches something together. You lie down. You rest your head on a ration sack, and for a moment, just long enough, you forget that tomorrow comes with whistles and bullets, and remember instead the scent of hay. You hear the crunch of frost before you feel the cold. It's late November now, and winter begins to sink its teeth into the trenches like a patient predator. The mud freezes in strange patterns, ridges and ruts that resemble tree bark or veins. You pull your collar tighter, everyone does. The trench has changed again. Now, it's not just a defense, it's shelter. Against bullets, yes, but also wind. Against the bone-aching wetness that clings even when it's not raining. You climb out for a brief supply run, escorted by a grizzled sergeant who knows every dip and dent in the terrain. He points out shell holes to avoid and tree stumps that aren't stumps. That one's Harry, he says grimly. Keep walking. You pass a group of engineers hammering together duckboards from salvaged barn wood. One of them hums a tune you remember, a lullaby maybe, or an old marching song. They've stopped asking where the wood comes from. Whole villages have been consumed by this war. Along the front, preparations are quieter now. Movements are slower, but no less deliberate. You arrive at a forward listening post, just as the fog rolls in. So thick you could mistake your breath for smoke. It's eerily quiet. No shelling, no shouts. Just boots shifting, rifles clicking. A whisper that someone swears came from the dark beyond the wire. And then, something unexpected. A faint glimmer of light, then another. Candles, lanterns, torches, on the German side. At first, you think it's an ambush, but no guns follow. Just singing. A carol, in German. Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht. You freeze. Someone beside you chuckles nervously and hums along. Then, without orders, a British soldier stands. He climbs out of the trench, unarmed. You hold your breath. Then another follows, and another, and from the other side, the same. Within minutes, you're watching what no one planned and no one quite believes. The Christmas truce of 1914. Soldiers, men who were trying to kill each other yesterday, meet in the middle of no man's land. They shake hands, exchange buttons, share cigarettes, chocolates, jam. You hear laughter, real laughter. One man even plays a violin. It's out of tune, but no one cares. A football appears. No one knows from where. Perhaps it was waiting in someone's pack for this very moment. The match is clumsy. One team claims victory. The other says they cheated. Everyone smiles. You speak to a young German boy, barely old enough to shave. He shows you a picture of his sister. You show him your ration tin, and he gives you a bit of sausage in return. His English is broken, but you manage. He asks, "You think we go home soon?" You don't answer. A quirky moment. Someone suggests organizing a Christmas dinner together, trench to trench. Someone else jokingly asks for permission to borrow a pot. The absurdity is beautiful. Scholars still debate how widespread the truce was. Some say it happened across miles of the front. Others insist it was only isolated stretches. But here, where you stand, it feels as real as anything else you've seen, just as temporary. You watch as men return to their lines before dawn. There is no ceremony, no official word, just a quiet understanding. It's over. Tomorrow they will fire again. You lie in your dugout, unable to sleep. The image of smiles, of songs sung across the wire, stays with you. It doesn't make sense, but neither does anything else. Back in your trench, you notice new graffiti scratched into the wall. "We could have been friends." The next morning, shellfire returns. Almost shy at first, as if the guns feel guilty. But soon, the rhythm of war resumes. You clean your rifle, you refill your canteen, you check your gear, and somewhere deep in your thoughts, you wonder if peace had visited just once and decided not to stay. The wind picks up, the stars vanish behind clouds, and once more, the earth becomes a cradle of fire. You march south now, though march feels too proud a word for the trudge your feet perform. It's early January 1915, and the new year hasn't brought any new hope. The ground is frozen hard as memory, and the air is a bitter knife tucked just beneath your scarf. You cross fields that were once golden with harvest, now scarred by craters and littered with the forgotten. Snapped rifle stocks, gas masks without straps, boots that no one came back for. A replacement unit joins your trench today. They're fresh-faced, uniforms still sharp with folds from the depot. Some wear smiles, nervous and wide, pretending not to notice the silence of those they're replacing. You show one of them how to lace his boots tighter. Mud will take your soul if it gets in too deep. He thanks you. Later that night, he's gone. Swallowed in a midnight raid you didn't hear coming. The trench holds. But something cracks a little deeper. You spend your mornings now on repair duty. One of the strangest things about this war, what no one ever includes in the stories, is just how much is spent on shovels. Thousands of men with rifles, fighting mostly with mud and sandbags. You stack them carefully today, shaping a parapet against the wind. Above you, wooden boards are laid across the top like teeth in a crooked jaw. You climb up once to peer into no man's land. Nothing moves, but you feel like something watches. A pigeon flutters down beside you, tied to its leg, a message capsule. The British use hundreds of these birds for communication. A quirky moment. One unit claims their favorite pigeon, named Winston, once flew through a storm, dodged a hawk, and still arrived with a critical map wrapped around his ankle. You let this one go, watching it disappear into the gray. Down the line, there's talk of a new threat, gas. No one here has seen it yet, but the rumors slither through the trenches like fog. Chlorine, they say. Invisible. It strips the lungs, melts skin. The officers hand out cloth masks soaked in urine, claiming it might help neutralize the vapor. You're skeptical. You use yours to keep warm. That evening, a shell lands too close. It doesn't explode. Not yet. You and 2 others are sent to market. It's dull, painted green, whistling faintly like it's still thinking. You poke it with a stick. It doesn't move. Later, sappers come and dig it up with the care of men handling a dragon's egg. Historians still argue how many shells like this litter the Western Front. Some estimates claim millions, still buried, still waiting, long after the war ended. You wonder if one will be found a century from now, by children playing where no one remembers why this ground once screamed. You help build a dugout that night. It's deeper than most, with wooden beams across the roof and straw mats on the floor. A candle glows in the corner. It's almost cozy. If you ignore the rifles stacked beside the door and the water dripping down the far wall, you share the space with 3 others. One tells jokes so dry they crack like twigs. One writes poems on toilet paper. The third just stares at a locket, night after night, like it contains a spell that might take him home. You fall asleep to their breathing. Outside, it rains again. You wake to a letter pressed into your palm. You don't remember who gave it to you, but it's addressed to a name you wore once, before you came here. You open it with care. The words inside are simple. They mention the garden, the cat, your sister's new piano. They say, "We miss you." And for one brief second, something warm pierces the cold. You tuck the letter inside your coat and head back to the firing step. The clouds above curl like smoke. Somewhere, distant artillery rumbles. Not urgent, not close, just present. Like breath, like time, like war. And you stand there, holding still, heart folded in paper, waiting for the next ripple to reach you. You begin the morning chasing a rumor. Word has spread through the trenches that something big is happening near the River Marne. The name sends a current through the men. Not quite hope, not quite dread. Just the promise of movement. You're sent as part of a small unit to investigate. The walk is long, cold, and quiet. You follow a path that used to be a road, now a suggestion, lined with blackened trees, collapsed wagons, and the occasional boot with no foot inside. Eventually, you reach the outskirts of a town that once buzzed with carriages and cafe music. Now it hums with a different song. One of marching orders, rumbling engines, and clipped phrases shouted across courtyards. You're in Paris, or close enough, and what you've heard is true. The French are mobilizing taxis. That's not a metaphor. They're literal taxis. Black Renaults with red wheels, pulled from the streets of the capital, driven by anyone who knows how to turn a key and dodge a pothole. They line the streets in columns, headlights dimmed, motors idling like anxious animals. A major waves you over and hands you a map. We're moving troops to the front. Every seat matters. You blink. It's absurd. It's brilliant. You climb into the passenger seat of a taxi, crammed with 2 soldiers and a boy with a bugle. The driver wears a bowler hat. He tells you he used to drive opera singers. Now he drives destiny. The convoy rolls northeast, headlights off, tension high. The soldiers are quiet at first. Then someone starts to hum a tune, and the others join in. You don't know the words, but the melody wraps around you like a scarf. Quirky fact: many drivers that night forgot to turn off their fare meters. By the end of the operation, receipts were filed. An army paid its cab fare to history. You reach the front lines just before dawn, and what unfolds next becomes the First Battle of the Marne, a clash that halts the German advance and rewrites the war. You're assigned to assist stretcher bearers. You carry wounded men across fields where red poppies will someday grow. For now, it's just mud and pain. You don't look at faces, not directly. Just hands, just tags. Shells explode behind a distant ridge. Shrapnel hisses through the air like angry whispers. Horses scream. You press forward. You witness a general standing calmly with binoculars, his uniform pressed, mustache immaculate. He chews a biscuit while watching the horizon. He's either brave or numb, maybe both. One soldier beside you falls, not from a bullet, from exhaustion. You help him up. He mutters something about his mother's attic, then smiles, then weeps. Historians still argue how the French and British managed to hold the line. Some credit the quick mobilization. Others say the German command was overconfident. Some believe fate intervened, that the war needed to drag on, and this was the world adjusting its gears. You just know that you were there. You helped build a makeshift hospital in a ruined schoolhouse, where chalkboards still bear math problems from a lesson interrupted by history. You help bandage a man's arm while children's drawings hang on the wall behind him. One depicts a sun smiling over green hills. You step outside for air and watch birds circle above. Then suddenly silence. A moment of stillness falls across the battlefield. No shells, no rifles, just breath. The German line retreats. Not far, but enough. The advance has been broken. You look around and see men not cheering, but breathing. Deep, weary, grateful breaths. One lights a cigarette. Another folds his cap over his heart. You write one word in your notebook. Pause. That night, back in a borrowed barn, you sit near a fire. A French officer passes out chocolate. The British pass around stories. Someone tells a joke about cows and cannons. It makes no sense. Everyone laughs. You lie on hay. Real hay. The smoke from the fire curls into the rafters like incense. You remember the taxi. The poppy's not yet blooming. The child's bugle still resting somewhere near your feet. And for a moment, you let the quiet hold you. You don't know that this war will last 4 more years. You only know that, for tonight, the line has held. And that Paris still breathes. You return to the front lines expecting more chaos. Instead, you find silence. A silence that doesn't feel peaceful, but tight, as if the land itself is holding its breath. The trenches have grown again, like veins deepening with every heartbeat of war. New layers, new sandbags, even timber reinforcements in some places. Someone jokes that soon there will be bunk beds. No one laughs. You join a working party hauling timber and chicken wire for a new listening post. The officer leading the group wears a monocle and has a stutter, but his orders are clear. If you hear digging on the other side, don't shout. Just tap. They'll tap back. Underground war. That's what this has become now, too. Sappers dig tunnels beneath enemy lines to plant explosives. It's slow, dirty, terrifying work. One wrong sound, one gasp in the dark, and you might trigger a collapse, or worse, get caught in a counter-tunnel. A quirky detail. British sappers sometimes use miners' canaries or water bowls to detect changes in air pressure, just like in coal mines. You see one unit gently passing around a cage with a tiny bird inside, chirping bravely despite the weight of the war around it. You climb down into one of the tunnels. It's tight. You can't stand. The walls press in, lined with planks and beads of condensation. Somewhere in the distance, you hear scraping, then tapping. Not from your side. You freeze. The sappers pause. No one breathes. Then silence again. They back out slowly, as if exiting a dream they weren't invited into. Above ground, life continues in its strange rhythms. A mailbag arrives. You help sort letters. Folded hopes from home. You notice how soldiers react before opening them. One holds it to his chest first. Another sniffs it, says it smells like soap and daisies. A third reads his, then burns it without a word. You ask why. He shrugs. She married someone else. You don't press. That night, you help reinforce the parapet near the firing step. The stars come out, muted by smoke and distance. Someone sings a lullaby. Not loud, just enough to keep the shadows from creeping too close. Then you see it. A flare rises. Green light hisses across the sky like a falling comet. Seconds later, gas. Not much, just a test. But it's enough. You fumble for your mask. It's a crude thing. Canvas and glass and something that smells like mustard and soap. You pull it on. Hear the rasp of your own breath echo in your ears. Around you, others do the same. You help one man whose hands are shaking too badly. The gas passes. No casualties. But you know the rules have changed now. Historians still debate when chemical warfare truly became widespread. Some point to this period. Others argue the real terror came later, with phosgene and mustard gas. But here, now, you feel the door creak open. There's a new fear in the trenches. Not just bullets, not just shells, but the invisible. Later, in a dugout warmed by a candle and 3 too many bodies, you hear a soldier tell a story about a ghost, an officer who appears before every failed charge. He says the ghost wears a red scarf and smokes a pipe. You ask how he knows it's a ghost. He says, because the pipe never goes out. You nod, because what else is there to say? The next day, your unit is rotated to the rear for rest. You arrive at a small village that still stands, barely. Children peek out from shuttered windows. A woman sweeps broken glass from her doorstep. A cow stands in a garden where no grass grows. You help unload supplies. Fresh bread, socks, a shipment of French wine accidentally labeled horse medicine. That night, you sleep in a real bed, a mattress, with springs. You lie awake, unsure whether the silence means safety or absence. You think about the tapping underground, the flare, the ghost with the scarf, and you wonder if the earth remembers every footprint laid upon it. Outside, it begins to snow. Soft flakes settle on broken rooftops, and the world, for a brief moment, feels hushed, like a theater before the curtain rises. You return to the front lines expecting more chaos. Instead, you find silence. A silence that doesn't feel peaceful, but tight, as if the land itself is holding its breath. The trenches have grown again, like veins deepening with every heartbeat of war. New layers, new sandbags, even timber reinforcements in some places. Someone jokes that soon there will be bunk beds. No one laughs. You join a working party hauling timber and chicken wire for a new listening post. The officer leading the group wears a monocle and has a stutter, but his orders are clear. If you hear digging on the other side, don't shout, just tap. They'll tap back. Underground war. That's what this has become now, too. Sappers dig tunnels beneath enemy lines to plant explosives. It's slow, dirty, terrifying work. One wrong sound, one gasp in the dark, and you might trigger a collapse. Or worse, get caught in a counter-tunnel. A quirky detail. British sappers sometimes use miners' canaries or water bowls to detect changes in air pressure, just like in coal mines. You see one unit gently passing around a cage with a tiny bird inside, chirping bravely despite the weight of the war around it. You climb down into one of the tunnels. It's tight. You can't stand. The walls press in, lined with planks and beads of condensation. Somewhere in the distance, you hear scraping, then tapping. Not from your side. You freeze. The sappers pause. No one breathes. Then, silence again. They back out slowly, as if exiting a dream they weren't invited into. Above ground, life continues in its strange rhythms. A mailbag arrives. You help sort letters. Folded hopes from home. You notice how soldiers react before opening them. One holds it to his chest first, another sniffs it, says it smells like soap and daisies. A third reads his, then burns it without a word. You ask why. He shrugs. She married someone else. You don't press. That night, you help reinforce the parapet near the firing step. The stars come out, muted by smoke and distance. Someone sings a lullaby, not loud, just enough to keep the shadows from creeping too close. Then you see it. A flare rises. Green light hisses across the sky like a falling comet. Seconds later, gas. Not much, just a test. But it's enough. You fumble for your mask. It's a crude thing, canvas and glass and something that smells like mustard and soap. You pull it on, hear the rasp of your own breath echo in your ears. Around you, others do the same. You help one man whose hands are shaking too badly. The gas passes. No casualties. But you know the rules have changed now. Historians still debate when chemical warfare truly became widespread. Some point to this period. Others argue the real terror came later with phosgene and mustard gas. But here now, you feel the door creak open. There's a new fear in the trenches. Not just bullets, not just shells, but the invisible. Later, in a dugout warmed by a candle and 3 too many bodies, you hear a soldier tell a story about a ghost, an officer who appears before every failed charge. He says the ghost wears a red scarf and smokes a pipe. You ask how he knows it's a ghost. He says, because the pipe never goes out. You nod, because what else is there to say? The next day, your unit is rotated to the rear for rest. You arrive at a small village that still stands, barely. Children peek out from shuttered windows. A woman sweeps broken glass from her doorstep. A cow stands in a garden where no grass grows. You help unload supplies, fresh bread, socks. A shipment of French wine accidentally labeled horse medicine. That night, you sleep in a real bed, a mattress with springs. You lie awake, unsure whether the silence means safety or absence. You think about the tapping underground, the flare, the ghost with the scarf, and you wonder if the earth remembers every footprint laid upon it. Outside, it begins to snow. Soft flakes settle on broken rooftops, and the world, for a brief moment, feels hushed, like a theater before the curtain rises. You wake to snow muffling the world like a woolen blanket. The village is quieter than you remembered. The snow covers the broken walls, the cratered roads, even the fallen signpost that once pointed toward Paris. You sip lukewarm tea from an enamel mug and let the steam warm your face. It smells faintly of metal and something sweet. Maybe someone stirred it with a cinnamon stick out of habit. Your rest period is over. You're going back. The march to the front is quieter now. Snow crunches under boots, horses huff plumes of steam, and rifles clatter gently against packs. You pass other units heading back too, some humming, some silent. One group sings, "Keep the home fires burning," but it falters midway through, like someone forgot the words or the reason. By the time you return, the trench is frozen solid. No more mud. Just walls of ice and snow-packed sandbags, stiff like old bones. A comrade jokes that if you die now, at least you'll keep fresh. No one laughs, not because it isn't funny, but because it's just too likely. You spend the morning helping reinforce the trench with whatever wood you can scrounge. Whole barns have vanished for this purpose. Fences, pew benches. A particularly stubborn doorframe is repurposed into a ladder, a quirky detail. One soldier insists on carving tiny faces into each of the trench posts. Some smile, some scowl. One, clearly, is meant to resemble the sergeant. The likeness is uncanny and slightly insulting. Shelling begins again by noon. It's routine now, like weather. You don't flinch anymore. You just listen for the whistle. If there's a whistle, it means it'll land far. If it's silent, you dive. Today they land far. You stay seated, sharpening a stick into a tent peg. Then comes the whistle, not from shells, but from your own line, a signal. You climb up, rifle ready. But the order is not to fire. It's to hold. You spot movement in the distance, just a few shapes. Scouts? Runners? They vanish before you can focus. You lower your weapon. Later, a letter arrives. It's read aloud to the group. It's official, impersonal. New policies from the high command. Mentions of rotating units faster, new artillery guidelines, and an upcoming inspection. Someone mutters, "Great. War's bad enough without having to tidy up." That night, you pull sentry duty. 2 hours, standing watch beneath a sheet of sky laced with stars so clear, it feels like you could scratch the frost off them. The snow reflects the moonlight. Everything glows silver and quiet. You hear footsteps crunching. You don't move. Just ask softly, "Who goes?" It's a runner, handing you a small note. You open it by candlelight. It's a coded message. But the code is simple. Enemy quiet. Movement expected. Be ready. You relay it and return to your post. Scholars still discuss whether this was the calm before a real storm, or just another hesitation in the grinding gears of the war. But you remember how it felt. How you could sense the land waiting, like it too had grown tired of the repetition, of men digging into its skin. Down the trench, you hear a harmonica. Always someone plays a harmonica. This one is bent on one side. The notes are warbled, but honest. You sit beside the player, say nothing, and offer him the last bite of your biscuit. He takes it like communion. Then the rats come. You forgot about them in the cold. But they're back now, bolder, hungrier. You chase one off your bedroll and swear it winked at you. Another quirky moment. One soldier insists the rats have formed ranks, like tiny armies. He swears he saw them drilling last night by moonlight. You believe him, because why not? You lie down again. Clutch the letter you haven't replied to. Think about the snow, the carved faces, the frost that creeps into your boots no matter how many socks you wear, and you fall asleep to the hum of breath and distant humming. Outside, the world turns slowly, like a wheel too large to see. But you feel it. You always do. You awaken to thaw. Not a full spring. Just the kind that comes in whispers, teasing the frost with trickles of meltwater. The trench has become a slippery soup again. Boards squelching beneath your boots, the walls sagging like cake in a collapsed oven. The men complain, but there's something almost celebratory about the shift. Winter didn't kill them, after all. They made it. You made it. And that feels like a victory, even if no one calls it one. You're assigned to ration duty this week. You'd think it would be dull, counting tins, distributing bread, recording supply levels. But here it's a sacred task. Food is more than sustenance. It's morale. A soggy biscuit means disappointment. A warm cup of tea means tomorrow. You crack open crates of tinned beef, pull out bars of ration chocolate, check the inventory list scratched onto oil-stained paper. Someone has added hope between lard and jam. No one erases it. You help carry crates to a forward position, passing through newer trenches reinforced with concrete and iron. One even has electric light, run from a sputtering generator that smells like toast and regret. The wires hum overhead, like bees arguing about direction. The men here are tired. Different tired. Not just physical, but historical. Like they know they're part of something vast and irreversible. They still joke, but it's quieter now. A sort of reverent sarcasm. You meet a captain who keeps a journal bound in leather. Not just war notes, poetry, recipes, sketches of birds he swears he's seen from the fire step. He shows you one of a falcon, mid-dive. You ask if it's real. He says, "I hope so." A quirky detail. One dugout has a sign above it. Ye Old Gentlemen's Club. Inside, they've nailed up curtains and stacked empty shell casings like trophies. One soldier reads Shakespeare aloud by candlelight, while another smokes a pipe carved from a piece of shrapnel. That night, the ground shakes. An underground mine has been detonated. One of your sides this time. The explosion is thunder muffled by earth, but it leaves a tremor in your bones. You feel it in your teeth. You feel it in your memory. You climb the parapet to watch the distant rise of dust, like a volcano yawning. Historians still argue whether this kind of warfare, the mining, the tunneling, actually tipped the scales, or just prolonged the agony. But here now, it feels decisive. The earth groans, and men disappear. You attend a briefing at dawn. New orders, new maps. An offensive is planned. You'll go over the top soon. the phrase itself makes your stomach turn. Over the top, as if it were just a hill or a polite hurdle. You clean your rifle again, not because it's dirty, because it's something to do. The sergeant reads names from a list. You recognize half of them. You realize that soon, some will be names carved into wood, names muttered at candlelight, names sewn into letters returned unopened. You help write a last letter for a boy who can't spell. He says, "Tell Mum I did my best. Tell her the birds here are different." You promise. You sleep fitfully. Dream of falcons. Dream of bombs that don't go off. Dream of your old bed with the scratchy quilt and the window that never closed properly. Morning comes. You line up with the others, bayonets fixed, fingers tapping rhythms you didn't know you remembered. Someone whispers a joke. Another hums a hymn. The officer raises his whistle. And though your heart pounds like a drum too loud for sleep, you nod. You're ready, not for battle, but for whatever comes next. You grip the edge of the trench as the whistle pierces the morning air. The sound is shrill, almost absurd. It seems too small to signal something so enormous. But it does. The men beside you move. First slowly, then all at once, like water breaking through a dam. You climb the ladder, boots slipping slightly on the rungs still wet from last night's drizzle. Your rifle is heavy, your breath shallow. The sky above is pale and blank, as if even the sun can't bear to watch. And then you're over the top. No man's land stretches before you like a scar. It's wider than you imagined, flatter than you feared. Barbed wire sprawls in tangled nests, glittering with frost. Shell craters pockmark the earth like giant footprints from a god who's long since walked away. You run. The first steps are the worst. Your legs expect to be hit. Your mind braces for the thud, but nothing comes. Yet, around you, others move forward. Some shout, some pray. Some go silent, caught in their own trance of motion. A machine gun rattles in the distance. You duck. Dirt kicks up near your feet. A shell explodes behind you, tossing a plume of earth into the sky. You keep going, not because you're brave, just because you don't know what else to do. You reach the first coil of wire and duck beneath it, careful not to snag your pack. The soldier beside you isn't careful. He curses. You help free him, hands trembling. Then you push onward. Through the haze, you see figures, some running, some crawling, some still. You reach a shell hole and throw yourself into it. Mud splashes your face. You breathe hard, pressing into the crater's cold walls like it can protect you. It can't, but for now it hides you. You wait, then crawl out. Keep moving. Somewhere to your left, a man yells that they've taken the trench. You don't know if it's true. But the cry sends a wave through the men, and they surge forward again. You follow. You crest a shallow rise and stumble into a collapsed enemy line. It smells of gunpowder and something sweeter, like burnt sugar. A smell you'll remember, but never name. You help secure the trench. It's mostly abandoned, bodies and gear left behind. You check corners, check pulses, check yourself. You're still here. You find a German helmet with a hole clean through the top. Inside, a letter, unopened. You take it and tuck it beside your own. Quirky moment. Someone finds a phonograph, miraculously intact, playing a slow waltz on repeat. The music floats across the ruined trench like a ghost dancing in daylight. You sit for a moment. A medic kneels beside you, checking wounds. You're fine, physically. But your hands don't stop shaking. You sip from your canteen and taste dust. The offensive stalls. Orders come to dig in again. Always, it returns to digging. You help shape a new trench, even though this one feels too fresh, too close to what just happened. You don't speak much that night, but someone lights a small fire, just enough to warm hands and hearts. You pass around a tin of tinned peaches, a luxury saved for victory. Scholars will someday ask if this battle meant anything. If this strip of land was worth the price. If the offensive really turned the tide or merely redrew the line in blood. You won't have an answer. You only know that you went over and came back. Later, in a lull between rain and shelling, you write your name on a wooden post with the stub of a pencil. You don't know why. Maybe just to prove you were here. And when you lie down to sleep that night, it's not with fear or pride or sorrow. It's with weight. The weight of mud on your boots. The weight of a war that never asked your name. The weight of memory. You close your eyes. And somewhere, deep in the earth, the tunnels still breathe. The wheels still turn. The frost begins again. And the world, impossibly, dreams. Wind down. Final 300 words. So now, the trench grows quiet. You've been here so long, the sounds become lullabies. The soft drip of meltwater from the overhead beam, the murmur of boots passing far above, the wind threading through broken boards. The war doesn't end tonight. But for now, it pauses. And you, curled beneath a blanket that smells faintly of wood smoke and iron, begin to feel the gentle press of sleep. You think of things you didn't expect to miss. Soap, fresh bread, your mother's voice calling from another room. You think of letters not yet written, and of the names scratched into wood, folded into journals, whispered into cold dawns. The fire beside you fades to embers, warm and low. Someone snores. Someone hums a lullaby with no words. And you, wrapped in the quiet rhythm of history, drift past the wire, past the chalk maps, past the endless rows of boots waiting for feet, into the soft hush of forgetting. Let your breath slow now. Let your thoughts settle, like snow falling on old scars. There is nothing more to carry tonight, only the silence. Only the stars, only you, and the soft echo of a world at war and dreaming.